Hey you, and welcome to my channel. My name is Tina and my aim is to improve your drawings just like others have done for me when I just started out. In this week's video, I'm going to talk you through the process of drawing this snake. It seems like I only draw cute and fluffy animals, thought it was time to get in a non-fluffy subject. And well, snakes are the first ones I think about in that case. When I was younger and still living at home, my brother had snakes, and now his daughter, my niece, has one too. So I think that is why it sparked the idea. I know a lot of people are scared of snakes and shiver at the sight of them, my mom being one of them. To me, they don't look cute, but I can appreciate the uniqueness of how they are built and how they move. It's wondrous if you think about it. Now enough with the snake talk and let's get going with the drawing of one. As you've seen by now, I'm using PanPastels for the background. I have a few colors picked out and I intend to make this a very blurry jungle-like background. Mostly green with a little blue peeking through that represents the sky showing through the trees or bush. I'm using PanPastels since these blend really easily and I can apply them very quickly with this sponge that I'm using. The key here is to not overthink it and just apply the colors you see on your reference and adjust where needed with some white or black to darken or lighten things up. You don't need an exact copy of the reference either. The background can be anything you want it to be. I just like this background a lot since it doesn't take away from the subject but accentuates it even more. When I'm happy with how the background looks, it's time to move on to our sneaky snakey. Now, this will be a work of patience and color matching, so it's really important to look at your reference for this, since each scale is different and has its own highlights, shadows and colors. I'm mostly using a dark olive color, a medium olive color and a light one, and using a warm dark gray for the shadows and darker scales. There aren't much different colors going into this one, just a lot of different ways to apply the colors. The most important thing here is to know which color you create when you layer one or more on top of another, and to play around with those. Again, don't overthink this and just try it out. You can always adjust the colors by going over them with another one if it doesn't look right the first time around. That's the beauty about pastel. There are endless correction possibilities, until you have saturated the paper, that is. So make sure to keep a light hand at all times. That way you can apply more layers and you can get even more correction possibilities. Now this would be a great time to remind you of my newsletter, which you can get by clicking the link in the description below. I am sending out one newsletter every month with an overview of what I've been up to that month and 4 reference pictures that I have taken myself for you to use as references for your own work, so don't miss out and click that link. And while you're there, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button too if you haven't already. Thank you very much! A blending stump comes in really handy here as well, since the scales are so small that you could mess them up pretty easily if you were to blend using your fingers. So make sure to be careful not to smudge them all together when you're blending. Notice how I work from the left to the right, because I'm right-handed. This way I don't need to use glassine beneath my hand this time, since the only thing I could possibly be smudging is the background. And that's not a problem this time around, since we wanted to have a really blurry background. Also, note that I have 2 different blending stumps that I'm using, one for the lighter color of the scales and one for the black scales and shadows of the overlapping ones. That's because I don't want to be bothered with wiping off the blending stump in between every use and just keep the flow going. Remember, once you are in the flow, try not to snap out of it. The flow when drawing is my happy place, so I hope it feels that way for you too. For the darker colored scales, I use the dark olive color and go over it with a medium olive color to mute it down a little. The lighter scales almost entirely consist of the light ivory color, where I go over a little with the shadow gray color to indicate where the other scales overlap. The black scales are drawn in using black for the edge of the scales and the dark gray for the color of the scales in the middle. I use a blue to get in some highlights on these. Whereas for the lighter scales, I use a white to get in the highlights. This gives me the impression that the scales are shiny and wet, which gives them a really cool look in my opinion. The layer that I don't blend out too much, or at all, is the last time I go around the scales to indicate the shadow cast on the lower laying ones with the dark gray. I want this to be a clear line since it would look like they blend into each other if I were to blend this out too much. The eye of the snake is nothing more than a lighter circle in pitch black, a yellow circle in this case. But we do need to add in some cast shadow in there, so I go over the right part of the circle with some brown to get in a little darker than the other half. And a little of that brown to accentuate some reflected sun in the black part of the eye. For the highlight on the pupil, I'm using blue and a dot of white on top of that to get in the brightest part of the highlight. This makes it look like the sky is reflected in there. After that, it's time to get in the rest of the face and darken up where needed, so we'll do just that right now. It's amazing to me that you would probably not even see this snake if you were passing it in the jungle, since their colors are so well adjusted to their surrounding that they blend in so easily. Kinda creepy too if you think about it. But hey, I always tell myself that if you don't mess with them, they will leave you alone too. Except for spiders, that is. They always seem to come running at me for some reason, although my wife still doesn't believe me on that and thinks that I'm imagining this. Okay, back to the drawing now, where we are coming to an end by getting in the final piece of this drawing, his little split tongue. I actually only noticed this by looking closely at the reference, but the tongue is purple. I always thought it was black until now, so I've learned something too by drawing this little one. See what drawing is good for, not only creativity, but knowledge too. Anyway, we're starting off with a dark purple to get in the base layer. I'm going over that purple with a black to get it a little darker since I thought it wasn't dark enough already. Blending this out with our trusty blending stump, of course. Getting in the highlights after this, starting with a very bright highlight at the top of his tongue, which is pure white because it's reflecting so much light since it's wet. The next highlights are just lighter purple and blue here and there, to get in some more colors and depth in there. Making sure to go over this one more time with black to get it back to the intensity we want it to be. And that's about it for our snake friend here. I hope you learned something with this one and that you didn't shiver out of your seat because of looking at the snake all the time. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And I also have a lot of other videos on my channel that might interest you, so definitely check them out. Next Friday, I'll be back with another video. See you then, and in the meantime, I hope you have a great week.